Thanks, Tom. We probably may need to look to wrap it up now, if you don't mind. So I think, again, very interesting points. The notion about numbers, similar to the notion about distance and mode, all things that are challenges that we have to think about. And I'll let Professor Bishop, at the end of the session today, sort of essentially give commentary on what he's heard from the panel as well as generally. But it just sort of strikes me, as we said earlier, that you know, the notion of making it evident that you care and that you're not focusing on a deficit model will look different depending on your circumstances and context. And as everyone keeps saying, USP is one of the most extraordinary institutions in terms of the complexity of its environment in which it operates. I think we'll recognise that. Ladies and gentlemen, could you please join me in thanking the panel for some very insightful thoughts here. Thanks so much. So the next part of the program is the presentations from the Teaching Excellence Award winners, and as I mentioned at the beginning of today, then we have a model this year where the Teaching Excellence Award winners are joined by one of their students to try and add an extra dimension to the presentations as well. And the first of our speakers today is Fiona Willens from Whālei, and her student Nasita Buatava, who's a Whālei postgrad student.
Bulumrag everyone, I'd just like to clarify a number of things before I begin. My fellow student or students, Maurice Carey, unfortunately cannot be here today, largely because I didn't really place a lot of pressure on him to be here. And I also wanted to state it on the outset that I feel very uncomfortable with the way we were sort of told as people getting the awards to get students along, largely because it's kind of awkward having a student say all the good things about you up here, with due respect to the other winners as well. And I guess it falls in line with what was given in the presentation in the morning, in the sense that my culture, it's very uncomfortable to have somebody saying all these great things about you, and indirectly you realize through the power relationship in that. So while I invited Maurice to come, I placed no pressure on him, and unfortunately he can't be here. But at the same time, I also wanted to project this idea within the 3 minutes time frame, so it's very short and just one slide, and that's what I was told. So I apologize if it's not as insightful or in detail. But the idea of this particular presentation, capturing some of the things that I've done in the last couple of years in having to teach ethics and governance, as a generic course, which essentially covers all different students from all the different faculties. And one of the things that I've realized is the notions of family and questioning what is the idea of family in our university. And I realized that this idea of everybody being part of Oceania, everybody being part of the region, situates ourselves in who we are in relationship to each other. And even before we start in the lecture content, it's very powerful to see when students start to realize who they are in the region and also in the university, and the ability of them and what they learn and how they can influence things around where they come from and their own position. So this idea essentially is just pitched around Oceania in learning and teaching before getting into concepts, before getting to the concepts of politics, governance, environmental ethics, all of these different facets. I realized that it's important to contextualize these issues around the concept, the content, and to maintain that connectedness between those groups, between the students. And within the central idea of this particular notion of where we are, who we are, where we come from, I realized that group work is very important. And in having to project that in terms of the learning process, that the students also teach me in terms of the learning process, and also they get to teach each other, but it takes a lot of time. And just as an example about the concept of regionalism and building group works of where each student comes from, Vanuatu, Solomon Islands, Samoa, Fiji, and having them pull what they feel are the resources that's important to them, and knowing that they're part of this big family, that we're all connected in one way or the other, and how that reflects on how they discuss. So it's always very fascinating, and this I learned from them, that there's so many things that I think I know, but I don't know, that a lot of the students, once they open up, they get to reflect. And it makes me realize too that the university literally is an embodiment of this ideal of that family, the connected family of the region. And that learning together is very powerful and also very insightful. And sometimes we can't monitor it, sometimes we can't qualify it, sometimes we can't quantify it. But it's there in terms of this group work. And I also realize how it's connected to the graduate attributes of not only Pacific consciousness, but building teamwork, largely because our graduates will become part of a greater team in the region or bigger team to stand for particular issues in the region. So out of it, I've come to the understanding that having to build this idea of family, which of course cuts into the keynote, is always been there. But at times the way we are told to teach or the way the expectations of teaching is sort of done in silos and separating students from their connection of ownership in the process and what they also will become part of to own in the region, and ultimately to connect in their sense of belonging and what they can impose. So specifically always having to teach myself to most of the times that this learning process and learning and teaching is centered in this reminding students and them reminding us too that we're all connected within this particular relationship that in a way literally this university is supposed to embody. No.
So our third speaker is Uktau Mehta and Vinay Prasad from Faculty of Science, Technology and Environment.
Hello everyone, thank you. And Vinit is my student, he's postgraduate student now, but before he was continuously worked with me under projects and some other units. So we are going to present about this, my philosophy of teachings, and basically after listening Professor Bisov, we come to know that, okay, this kind of outcomes is only possible because of good relations, trust established between student and teacher, and that's why it's very much pleased to know about all which you present today, Professor Bisov. So I'm going to talk about how this teaching we need to take into inspirations for more innovations and creativity. So as we know, our ultimate goal as being engineers and being to know and create more innovators and the students, those who should have more problem solving skill and critical thinking. So I believe that education is the process of way of thinking. So we should try to not only embed just knowledge and the problem to solve as theoretically, but they should also know how they can solve the real issues practically. So problem solving skill is very important. So at the early time when they come to second level of second years, we should try to give something which they will take it as a problem solving. So don't give any kind of, what I believe, so don't give some kind of problem which has direct solutions, but some open problems through projects or through laboratory exercise. That requires a lot of more thinkings and putting more techniques into it. So by the time when they come to the second year to third year, some of them will start
solution to an existing problem, and it is only possible through effective teaching support. So thank you.
And our final speaker is Zena Shirani and her student, Thandi Tongi-Valu.
Bula Vinaka, I'm Zena, and our presentation is titled Empowering Mindsets of Students Through Creative Pedagogies in Applied Societal Contexts. To begin with, my task as an instructor begins with designing a curriculum with modern pedagogies, one which is flexible, inclusive, Pacific-oriented, and meets the course learning outcomes and program learning outcomes of the institution. In doing so, I ensure that my course learning outcomes and assessments are aligned to the 100-level sociology courses offered at the faculty level. My approaches to teaching are informed by the particular needs, education histories, and cultural backgrounds of my students that I work with. As a teacher, I strive to make the learning experiences of my students fun, and engaging in ensuring that they come to class the next day. I use a variety of teaching methods to get students to think critically about issues and concerns affecting them as young people, and motivating them to probe deeper by taking it outside the classroom setting. And in doing so, parents have shared that the discussion carries on with their dinner table, and as peers of peers have shared that healthy debates tends to take place around the usual Gunu Sende context. It is important to say that the development of ICTs through Moodle has bridged the gap of the learning experiences of students, particularly those out in the region. So what Moodle has to offer are both synchronous and asynchronous tools, which students are able to use, interact, and engage with students and staff, not only in Fiji, but across the region. I tend to design assessments which students find meaningful and are able to apply theoretical contents to real-life situation. Now, when assessing students, I have been able to come across where students have been able to challenge the conventional boundaries, think critically, be innovative and imaginative in their approaches, make mistakes, which is part of the learning process, and have the courage and freedom to express openly. Hence, I have not only provided them with the 21st century skills required at today's workplace, but I've empowered them to use the knowledge and skills to make a positive change in society. And that is the goal of us as sociologists. In conclusion, I've empowered my students with the knowledge and skills at the foundation level, which will allow them to transit better as independent adult learners as they choose to enter the faculty level or simply join a workplace. I will now call upon my student, Tengu, who will enlighten you with the experiences that she has gone through in her journey as having me as a mentor and instructor in sociology. Vinaka.
Bula Vinaka to one and all. My name is Tengu Mailangi Tongani and coming straight out of high school into my first year of foundation in the university level, I feel that as a learner of sociology, it is very diverse, inclusive, and accessible to the use of the basic ICTs, face-to-face communication, and online communication. Watching pre-recorded lectures is like having Zina in the room with me, explaining and teaching me in more detailed and in a more easier way to understand, creating a safe space which maximizes my learning. Also, accepting criticism, constructive criticism is also a crucial element which implements and creates more progress, and Zina does this very well. I personally love how Zina teaches from her own skills, knowledge, and past work experience from NGOs. It allows us as students to see society from a different perspective, keeping the teaching lively and making us students more eager to learn about sociology.